Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of In the Dark. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's start off with the whole situation of, well, now without Josh's help, how are they going to find their way around the situation? Which I was wondering last episode, whether, they know what, Josh did or not. No one said anything, so we're just kind of moving past that. I think the timing's interesting because I want to say it was the season 3 finale. Someone recently commented being Murphy, they realize this is all kind of on Murphy, but they hope Josh eternally steps on a Lego or something like that. They want him in basically, I forgot what the comment was. I thought that was so the analogy they used. They just basically wanted Josh to be in pain because they were I think that, I don't know. I think that was just based on where they were in the show. I guess they had just finished seeing the third season 3 finale at that time. But I was oh, you feel like that now? If you hadn't started season 4 yet, you're probably that person probably is going, oh, hate Josh even more once we get into this. Once they get into this season. But nevertheless, putting all that aside, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next, and it's well, the only thing they can do is set up a deal. Because it's right, they're running out of time, because if they're not careful, Murphy's deal is going to be up, and she's going to go to trial once again for something she didn't do. So, Darnell knows Trey enough to be I know he's lying to me. He definitely knows who the person behind all this is. So, he's handling that while Max and Murphy are trying to figure out the money situation, which they go to Felix, which Felix is wait, your CIs, is this the whole, why you kept me at a distance thing? At the same time, Max is kind of apologizing to Leslie, and, she knew on some level that Max was, that it was always going to be him and Murphy, but at the same time, it's she didn't want to listen to that because, I think sometimes you kind of think, she probably thought, well, maybe this is my insecurities, this is what I want, so she's at the very least, be honest with me that it was always going to be her. And he was yeah, I can't help it. It's just kind of the situation I'm in. I can't help it. It's just one of those things. And, it's oh, but I heard, while you guys were away, you met a girl. And she's we're not friends yet. Which Max is yet. Because I think Leslie, she's a little still upset with Murphy and Max, but she's lightened up a little bit, especially after that situation with Paula, with her and Darnell and Murphy. She spent a lot of time with Murphy and kind of understanding what she was going through, and her keeping Max at a distance, to also protect him and everything. It all meant she still sees Murphy as a screw up, but it's also damn it, now I find myself kind of liking you. I think that's what kind of bothers her. So I think she's in a world where she's kind of, it's going to still take a while, but she I think is working her way to forgiving Murphy and even Max too, because it's just kind of right. I mean, it's you weren't the only one deluding yourself, Max. I was kind of deluding myself into thinking this was something when even on some level I knew that it wasn't going to last, so. But Leslie doesn't want to kind of be a part of the operation, but Felix, he finds out about Murphy getting engaged. It's he had his complicated feelings about it, but he does love Murphy, and he does care about her. And he's I want you to be happy, and I've never seen you this happy before. He's but do not make me your maid of honor or something like that. I'm oh, that'd be so cute. Because it's sadly, she doesn't have Jess there to fill that role, so it would make sense. It would kind of fall to Felix in that regard, so. Because I feel he'd probably be more likely to be her best man than his, than Max's. But I mean, to be fair, the two of them actually did kind of get close. They bonded over the Dead Parent Club situation. So either way, so Felix uses this situation to get with Jimmy McKay's daughter, which I said last episode. I was it's got to be him, right? Totally ends up being him. But I love that whole situation. He's being very mystique about the money and everything. It's and him and Miss McKee end up banging it out, and it's cool. She's I'll get you the money. He's man, I feel a little dirty. She's oh, you're more than a little dirty. I was hey, yo! Oh, that's awesome. I hope that does become a thing. I think that'd be so cute. It's everyone else is kind of coupling up. It's let let Felix have a win. I mean, I guess he's had some losses along the way. I'm about to say you did have a threesome last season, but it's like, yeah, but a lot of stuff kind of fell after that fact. So it's kind of like, yeah, you need to kind of be on the up and up again, So, but she ended up getting him the money, but at the same time, Darnell found out about Jimmy McKay being the one that's behind everything. So he's not directly connected in all of this. He basically invested money, and he basically gets a cut, 20%. So that's kind of his only connection to the drug world. It's just like more money for him to kind of do whatever he wants to with. So, but that's the problem now. It's like, cool, we got all this money to set up a deal, but we'd basically be paying the guy who's investing his money with his own money. We'd be paying him for drugs with his own money. So it's like, how do we even set that up? It's like, well, they set up a situation to make him desperate. And I love, Darnell played Trey like a fiddle. I love it. Because, Trey thinks himself so smart. And so it's like, yeah, but because Darnell knows him so well, it's like, I know what buttons to push. It's like, yo, man, look at how much money you get. 20%. It's like, yeah, he might have gotten you this far, but you can handle it on your own, playing into, Trey's ego, thinking like, no, I can do this. Like, yeah, I got this. He's always wanted to prove himself, to be like, no, I got this. Yeah, I don't need him. It's like, yeah, 5% or I'm a walk. And it's like, yo, put him in a situation where he desperately needs you. So Trey ends up giving him all the pills. Which that actor, I'm wondering what I've seen him in recently. Because I know one thing I know him from was season 2 of Orphan Black. He was part of that little cult in Orphan Black season 2. I've seen him in other stuff too, but that's the one thing that immediately pops into my head. He was kind of like the shepherd of that flock. I don't remember his character's name. It's been a while, but obviously Orphan Black, with Tatiana Maslany, and She-Hulk and everything, so it's even more on my mind. Either way, gave him a whole bunch of pills, and it's like, cool, they need to now set him up in a situation where he needs to sell that. So Murphy first and foremost, Max went back to being kind of working for him, because that's what Leslie and Felix's grandmother were willing to do. So those two are working together to try and get their grandmother to bend to this whole situation. But obviously she's very oh, I'm not doing anything for you, you ungrateful children. And then Felix played the blackmail card, being like, oh, won't you? Because if he goes down, you got some kind of connections, and the court's not going to see it that way. And it's like, oh, you're blackmailing me now? It's like, well, we learned from the best. It's like, it's kind of yeah, your grandma sucks. Kind of I get it. It's right. It's I want you guys to come to me when you don't need. I thought we just wanted to hang out, but it's to be fair, the grandmother can be an asshole, so I'm kind of yeah, I kind of it's kind of well, that's how this family does business. We're kind of assholes to each other. It's kind so it kind of felt right. So Max gets the job, got access to Jimmy's schedule. So it's cool. We set him up, and having Murphy honey trap him essentially. And then she ended up having to pop the bolt as because of that, which I'm that's not good, because we know that shit's cut with fentanyl, which is gonna make it super lethal. So it's okay, cool. So they both pop it, and I was kind of worried, because she was tripping balls, and she was at first I kind of did. I was oh, that pool's super deep, and I was oh, it's she's tripping balls. She's kind of seeing it as super deep, she's in the ocean. I was once again, from a cinematography standpoint, I was oh, that looks actually really beautiful. Especially because she's thinking about Max, which I thought please don't let that get into that complicated. Because she was yo, home dude's penis is going to be nowhere near me, so you don't have to worry about it. But I was if you're tripping balls and thinking he's Max, will that have an effect? But then she's deep underwater, and it seemed like Max was trying to get to her. I'm are you drowning right now? I'm you're super deep underwater, and you haven't come up for air for a while. I'm are you? And it's yeah, luckily Jimmy went in and got her. And she's no, I'm good. I don't know whether she was just high off of just the pill, probably, or just a culmination of everything. But it's yeah, she almost drowned in that pool. So luckily he was able to save her, and now she's able to spin this story about yeah, my boyfriend, he's he's in a selling drug business, which Jimmy's hey, I have all these pills, but he's not quick to jump on it, so they make a fake subpoena to give to him, which sets him in motion. And it's I was worried at first when he'd call up his like lawyer or whatever, but his lawyer's like, "Yo, I like work local case. This sounds like a federal thing." I'm like, "Okay, good. Doesn't sound like you have any connections." Because I was about to say if he had cop connections, he could probably like officially check this out to be like, "All right, is there anything like up with this?" Because I was like, because that could be the snafu to be like, "Wait, there's no actual warrant, like someone's messing with you," type of thing. But it seems like no subpoena or anything. So I was like, okay, that was kind of worrisome. But it's like, nope. That went through. He's willing to buy the pills off of Murphy and her boyfriend. So the groundwork has been laid. So it all worked out beautifully. Now it's just simply a situation of putting Trey in a position where him and Jimmy could get taken down at the same time, because that way they can't warn each other. And once both of them have been removed from the board, then this bolt thing is over, because neither one of them can be left alone on the board, because Jimmy will just find someone else to invest in, or Trey will just be able to continue with this on his own. So like they got to cut off both heads of the Hydra, all the heads essentially. So we'll see how that plays out, but it's like, cool, Darnell's going to play the role of my lovely boyfriend. And it's like, she's like, well, I always thought we'd end up together. But then, like, Max had to, Max had to be stupid and get in the way. And it's like, he's like, well, you don't know how handsome I am. And she's like, yeah. I'm like, that's super cute. Which part of me wonders in the back of my brain, I'm like, was that ever going to be a thing? Darnell and, like, well, in the grand scheme of things, you're kind of like, well, it seems like it's not that out of the realm of possibility, because it's like, I mean, you probably would have never thought Felix and Murphy would have even been an option, and it super became an option. So it's like, yeah. I wonder, is that, because, once again, you read into things too much, but like, I'm wondering, like, has that ever been like a pairing people have ever wanted? I'm sure people have always probably wanted the Max and Murphy thing. Even, once again, they are a train wreck, but there's a beautiful train wreck element to like their relationship. There's a beauty to like how complicated messed up that is. But I wonder on some level, have people ever like put Darnell and Murphy together? I mean, she's known Darnell much as long as she's known Max, and they've always kind of been connected in one way or another. So it probably could have, like, joking aside and everything, being serious, like that probably could have still happened. I also love while they're explaining and planning everything, you see Felix taking notes, and Leslie's looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop it, you nerd. Because he's like, right, wants to keep, I guess it's like, he's taking minutes of the planning of phrase and stuff like that, which I even love. Gene's like, I can't believe you idiots actually figured this out. It's like, I love that. I mean, it's like, yeah, they are bumbling idiots. Like, they've legitimately bumbled their way throughout this entire show, and I love it. That's why I feel like this is like probably like way more Ozark than it is Breaking Bad, like tonally speaking, because like the birds kind of like fucking tumbled their way through something, so it's kind of like that same thing. So, but and I mean, it seems like everything's kind of lined up, but I'm like, how are things going to go sideways? Because they go sideways because of the opening, which is the opening of the first episode as well. But now it's like, oh, instead of that being 3 months away, that's 4 days away. And now you're like, right, you're leaning into it more and more, being like, all right, it's got to be Max, right? But then immediately I'm like, is it? I mean, I was like, there's got to be like some switcheroo here or something. I'm like, it can't be. Like, because once again, I knew it wasn't going to be Darnell. Like, it had to be Max. Like, that's the only way she was going to have that reaction. Because I was like, it's still going to end up being Max? Because I didn't believe it was going to be Darnell. My thought at the time was like, is it going to be Felix or Max? But I figured it wasn't going to be Darnell. Because we do find out, like, obviously, we see the pin on the body, or one of the buttons on the body from the coat, and it turns out that's Max's coat, because we see that Felix gave him that. But we don't. Once again, this show loves to switcheroo at the last second, the subterfuge. So I was thinking, like, having seen the intro again, seeing that again, I'm like, it's most likely someone else, isn't it? I mean, they might just give, like, Murphy the tragicness of, like, losing Max when they have all these plans and stuff together. It's like, once again, you plan, God laughs, right? So maybe that's kind of the direction that's kind of heading in. But I'm like, could it? I caught a glimpse of the preview that kind of lends itself to be like, oh, it could be this. But also the thing is, like, we never know. Like, there could be someone else in that elevator that caught that stray, and or maybe it's like it could be like a Darnell or a Felix making a sacrifice. Because, well, we know at least Darnell's there, so, and then Max is potentially going to be there, so maybe Darnell's the one that caught the bullets protecting them or something like that. I don't know. I just get the feeling like it could, that's the thing, though. It could legitimately go either way. Either they're like, nope, it is Max, but also it's like you're like, no, they're setting this up. They're pointing to the stands. They're pointing to the sign, being like, yep, it's Max. It's like, oh, like, but I know it's a red herring, but it might be that thing of it's so obvious that you're like, it can't be, that it's like, no, it is. Like, it's hard to say, but it's like, I feel like that's got to be the last minute twist, that it can't be Max. But then again, it might be, no, you might think so hard that it can't be because it's so obvious that it actually is. I mean, they made you really lean into the whole, like, oh, it might be Jess thing, but you're like, oh, are they about to do Jess dirty like that? And you're like, well, about to do Max and Murphy dirty like that? Once again, having their plans, him wanting a small place, for them, and a kitchen so he can cook, and even a lemon tree, because the lemon tree was like one of the last things he had with his mom, like one of his last memories with his mom. And I love that line. That it's actually a very dark and fucked up line to some extent. I mean, but it kind of like it's very representative of Murphy, but also just their relationship. Where he's like, "Oh, I thought you'd make fun of me." She's like, "You think I'd make fun of like your last, like one of your last memories of your dead mom? Like, what kind of monster do you think I am?" I'm like, "Oh, that's It's like," and she's kind of laughing because it's like, yeah, that is kind of like their shtick. It's kind of her shtick in particular, like being kind of dark and fucked up like that. But it's like, it kind of plays well in their relationship. So. But Max wants to use his opportunity not only to like bust Jimmy, but also to make sure that they it's like, right, you get dressed up once, let's get married now. It's like, I don't want to wake up one more day not being your husband. So it all goes down like the next day. So, but the question is, what goes wrong? How does Jimmy find out? Like, how did things get to that point? I mean, does Trey find out? Does Jimmy find out? I mean, there are still a few loose ends, and I'm like, are they going to get settled with? I mean, we know Sam's in prison, so what's that? If there's going to be anything else with Sam in the series? There's still the Josh situation. I'm like, was that the last we've seen of Josh? Him and Chelsea? Like, is there anything that's going to come of that? I don't know. There's also, once again, Murphy's deal, and that whole thing is going to be interesting considering the fact is that Josh doesn't know about. I mean, he kind of like he said like, screw this anyway, so it doesn't matter. But Gene did lie to him. It's like, oh no, there's no deal in play when there actually is. And if Murphy doesn't go down, like, what is Josh gonna feel like? There's still angles to this that can be played with. We have 2 hours of the show left because next episode is the penultimate episode. So I'm so curious to see. That is kind of wild because you'd almost feel like because of everything that's going down, that would be the series finale. But I'm like, I guess like the series finale might be more of an epilogue than anything. If a lot of the heat is going down next episode, we just don't know how this is all going to play out, how the dominoes are going to fall, and that's going to be fascinating to see. But we'll just have to wait and see where all of this takes us next. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.